Hey guys, this is John Stark back for the next section of the tutorial here, and you'll see that I guess I'll level with you and tell you that last night I finished the last section of the tutorial, and I thought, well, I'll just leave this till tomorrow because it's pretty late, and start to finish up the tutorial when the morning comes. And sure enough, I had a Windows update, and it sort of wiped all of my work that I had previously, so I kind of lost that scene. I mean, I'd had a sort of a similar scene that was saved, so it wasn't any big deal. I loaded it back up and redid sort of the work that we did on the prior tutorial, which wasn't any big deal because it's a fairly simple hairstyle. Even though we're calling this a more complex hairstyle, it's not that complex by any stretch. And so in a couple of minutes, I sort of built it back up. And in this portion, you can see I did the back hair. You can sort of see down in the preview there that it's draped down nicely like it was before. And the blue section and the red section is the overlay. But that's all sort of the back hair. And the green section is the new section, the front section that I'm making the swoop on. And you can see that I've added a lot of guide hairs on the front here. Not a lot, but a fair number, almost as many as the back, really. And one of the things I wanted to draw your attention to is because I knew that the style we were going for was going to be one of those where the hair lays over. It's not a center part, but it's a side part with a little bit of a swoop. And so it was really important to me when planning this out, or when thinking about it, that I wanted that part to be apparent. I didn't want it to sort of just blend together and pull a few strands over that way. I wanted there to be a really clear delineated part where the part was, and that's why I added this sort of two rows of guide hairs real close together, and a lot more of them there than elsewhere, because I didn't want the loose hairs to have any confusion about where they needed to go. I want them to follow these specific guide hairs. So I started to brush it and realized I better come back into the tutorial. So I'm just brushing it over to the side here. We're going to drape it in the normal fashion in a minute here. But one thing that you'll notice, especially when you're starting with a guide hair that's on the other side of the scalp and you start to bring it over, is it's not really long enough that it wants to stay over there. It will, if we left it at this sort of short default 1 foot, when we draped it, it'll come down, and then several of them, in fact, might end up going over to the other side. And this is particularly true if we've been doing a different and more complex part, because I want the part to be visible as a part. But there's another way to do this where we take all the guide hairs on this side and bring them this way over to the left side, and then take the ones that are already on the left side and bring them to the right. And it's still a part, but it's sort of like an interwoven part. It's really no more complex than doing the regular part. It's just sort of a different effect when you see it rendered. In this case, I don't want that, or I'm not going for that, but I thought I'd mention that because that's kind of a neat little trick that you can do to sort of interlock the hairs, get that sort of interlocking part as opposed to a part where it's down to the scalp. So what I'm going to do is, even though it's 1 foot at the default here, I'm actually going to just go ahead and grow it, because I know that I'm going to need more length than what I've got for those ones to lay down like I want them to lay down. And you're going to see that part of what we're doing here, because this is the section that's going to be shaped, we're going to assign a shape stiffness to it. You'll see that the draping is not going to be the be-all and end-all. It's really just a starting point for us to do the actual styling. I'm going to do mostly with the brush, but it wouldn't be any different if I was using the clump tool or the curl tool. It's just that I'm being very specific about the shape that I want this to attend to this. I could throw some clumps and curls into it, but I don't think I need to in this particular hairstyle, so I'm not going to. But it's no different in the effect that we are changing the geometry of the hair, and we want it to stay in that geometry even while we're running simulations, and that's why we're assigning that shape stiffness to it. So let me just quickly bang it out here so that we get a little more length out of it. I think maybe even 2 feet. 2 feet and a 1 foot radius. We can go big and trim it back. Ooh, that is really big. I don't know if I should have gone that big, but anyway, it's no big deal. We'll brush it on over, just enough so that I'm not doing a whole ton of work here or anything. I'm just doing enough that I know it's going to fall to the right side, to the side that I want it to fall to. And again, it'll fall forward too. So I'll zap it back. A lot of this is going to be kind of more forward than the back hair, obviously, but I still feel like zapping it out of her face is probably the better way to start the drape anyway. Some of it will still come down into her face, but the less we get into her face, the better, if you will. But a lot of it is going to go into the face, actually, as you'll see. But that's okay. We're going to sort of drag it out as we go, too. So I'll go ahead and do a quick drape. Not 100. I don't want to go 100. I don't. Let's say 40 maybe. That even might be too many. So I'm going to start the drape process, but I got one finger hanging over the escape button on my keyboard so that I can stop it at any time. So, you know, we're going to start to see some of these strands are going to want to just fall right across her face as opposed to the back of her skull, because even though they're back there right now, as it goes, they're so far forward on the scalp that it doesn't make sense for them to stay back there. They'll slide through their other hairs and start to come forward. And right about there. I'll hit the escape button on this. Oh, I missed it. There we go. I'll convert it. Did I already do the I didn't do the audio grouping yet. I might as well do that right now. I did it on the back here. I don't know if I showed it in the video, but auto grouping, I like it at 3.3 to 3.6, somewhere in that range. And then I just sort of let my eyes be my guide on that. I'm going to push it out from the scalp. Like I said, I want in this particular hair, I kind of want a little more space between the scalp and the face and whatever. So I've got the auto push set to 0.07 instead of the 0.05 that I had before, or the 0.01 that's sort of the default if you really want the hair close to the scalp. And when I pushed that, you saw it sort of jumped out from the scalp there. We'll zoom in and cut it. Now at any time, if I want to, I can just take a look at the back hair group, get an idea of length or whatever, and sort of, whoops, I don't want a new hair group. I want to go back to the front hair group. So I know I could chop this down quite a bit, and I'm going to. I really did probably lengthen it way too much. I just wanted to make sure that it fell in the right direction. And I could just yank it across with the brush tool. There's nothing that stops me from doing that. But easier is always better, or something like that. Might as well make life easier on myself and get things generally in the right place before I start to style. Okay, so now here comes the styling portion here. Now this portion, ultimately I want to set the shape that I want it to naturally conform to most of the time. And what that's going to be is it's going to be a small swoop over here and sort of back over the ear and then back over the shoulder for the left side. And over here I want it to be forward swoop, like out to here, and then back over the shoulders as well. So in both cases, the hairs are going to end up sort of behind the shoulders, so I need them to be about that long. But in both cases, there's going to be a little bit of swoop forward. This one less than this one, especially this one. I want that sort of, you know, hanging over the eye or over the left eye kind of look. And we are going to accomplish all of that with just the brush tool. So our brush tool is going to be our friend on this. Because I'm going to be doing a lot of styling with the brush, I'm going to actually have the collision distance set, let's say 0.07 there too. And that way when I'm yanking on hairs, I can't pull them through the mesh, because I don't want to. I mean, I can always use the push tool to push things out, and I probably will a few times, because this is not as it seems like even when I set it high where it won't zap through, somehow or another I get frustrated by something and either turn this off and yank it through, or it seems to get a little closer than I like. So I might still use the push tool at any time, but for now I'm going to just try brushing these generally into the right place. And I'm not going to make you sort of suffer through all of this, because this can take a little bit of time. Whoa, what did I do wrong? Oh, restrict to selection. Nah, I want it to brush whatever. This is good. This is why I keep turning off the collision distance. It's because when it's hitting the shoulder and it says I'm too close to the shoulder, I can't go any farther, and so I'm trying to pull it backwards, but it's not going anywhere. So I'm turning it off just so I can sort of drag it through and into the ending location where I want them. Not perfect, but we'll just generally get the ends where we want them, and with the ends where we want them, then we can start to sort of do the front where we want them to. This isn't any kind of super. You can get really, you get like some of the whoops, like some of the hair sets that you buy from the data store. Some of those guys, if you really just take a look at what they've done, they get super precise. They're down there like they'll have every little guide hair to the bang is just at the right curve and angle. And you know somebody just sat there for a long time doing that to make it really precise. And there's a type of hairstyle that that's good for. But most hairs that you see in everyday life, they're not that precise. I mean, even if the girl has just hairsprayed it to death, um, they're just not usually that precise. And so, especially for this as an example, for you guys to see kind of how these are put together, no reason I don't think there's any reason for me to be anything other than sort of quick and dirty. I don't want her to look like she just stepped out of a uh, movie studio where they spent 8 hours on hair and makeup for her, and there's just not one strand out of place. Everything is even, so even that it doesn't look real. That's not good. That's not what I'm looking. That's not what I'm going for. So we'll sort of generally we've got them sort of back behind the ear, or not behind the ear, but behind the head. And you could see that even though, well, I had the collision distance turned off, didn't I? But I've pulled a lot of the hair. I've managed to pull a lot of the hair through the scalp. So our best friend is the push tool. We can rely on it at any time. We use that push tool, click it out. It's outside of the mesh once again. It's looking, actually, it's not a half bad start. Of course, got some crinkles and stuff down here, but some of that will go away as we sort of pull it back. I'm going to pull it back a little bit more first. Try to yank it down to get some of that out of there. And we could use the smooth tool to get some of that out of there too, but might as well just do it this way. I think mainly the main thing that was hard for me to get over and that I'm trying to sort of emphasize here is everything you do is easily corrected. Or, you don't have to feel like, oh, I have to just tiptoe around this thing so delicately, and if I get one strand out of place, I'll never get it back to where it was, and I'll have to start all over. It really is not true. These tools are very forgiving, especially with the push tool. That's looking nice. Look at that. Those curves there. That's looking nice. Now, this is not where I want it to be yet. I want it to be behind the ear a little bit, but it's a good start. And I'm not really going to like style it to be exactly behind the ear. I'm not looking at this at the outside here. I'm just basically looking for a little swoop at the top and a little bit in the middle that gets pushed back a little bit more. So we're going to play around with the point tools and get this a little bit more precise, closer to what I want. Let's take it out to the middle. That's pretty good. All right. Probably should have done that from the side on. It would have been a better approach. That's kind of sort of in the ear region, but I want it actually to be over the ear. If the part that I want to pull forward is up here, so that's what we're going to do is just zap that point tool way on back and pull some of this forward up here. Let's see how that looks here from the front. I'm going to zap the middle there and pull it in a little bit. Because I think it's too poofed out. And I want it to blend nicely with the loose hairs. And the loose hairs are, even though I've got that offset, all the loose hairs at the back are going to be much closer than this stuff that's shaped. So I don't want it to be super apparent that there's two super separate hair groups. I want them to kind of look a lot like each other. Yeah, that could be pulled in a little bit. And at the bottoms too. We got the bottom way out there. Whoops. Hold. Oh no, I yanked some stuff through. What do I do? The push tool. Boom. Kapow! If ever there was a reason to co-opt Kreitman's cool saying, it's that push tool to me. I just love that. Kapow! All right, let me pull. So the other one I wanted sort of a little farther out, but still in some more than it is. So let's yank that on in there. And in the middle, a little farther back. And you see what I'm doing. It's kind of, it's not like I'm being a surgeon here. I'm just generally getting things in the region of where I want. It's very forgiving in the way it looks, and we can get more precise when there is a time for more precision, and this is not it yet. So let's get up top there, make sure everything is kind of in the right place. I kind of want this to be higher, and the reason I want it higher is because I know from simulations that the gravity will pull it down, and so if it pulls it down too far, then it's like all across the face. We want it to be just over the eyes and sort of bouncing back into, not bouncing like a ball, but having the volume or the natural pull to go back to another position that's a little farther away. And forward too. I want that forward as well. So how's this looking? That ain't bad. That ain't bad at all. So I think I mentioned before that with the shape tool, we have to assign some amount of shape to it. I like the air dampening to be pretty close to what it is for the loose even. I'm going to lower it just a little bit to see how that plays out. And the shape, what I found is you go too much below 20 and it's just can't hold up. I mean, it still goes back to its shape, but it's just not strong enough for the rigger. You throw a lot of wind through it or a lot of gravity, and it's going to be falling too loosely across the face. Up to 30 or higher starts to get too stiff. Not that that's not a real hairstyle too. Women, you've seen not just women, but people who have so much hairspray that it's just like they're bulletproof. But I want a little natural flow, a little natural bounce to it. We're going to have some bounce to it, it looks like to me. This looks just about right. Let's see here. Except for this part of the back. And this is where I'm going to start to play with some of the parameters of the hair brush tool. And we talked about this before, that if the stiffness is set high, then you push on the brush and it sort of affects all along its length for a larger swath. But if I want to just knock down these ones at the back so that they're sort of more flush to the back and blend in nicely with the loose hair, because the loose hair will fall through this and this will sort of be sticking through if we leave it like it is. If I want to just affect this without pulling my nice little, not that it's super great anyway, but our shape that we've got going on up here, then we just lower the stiffness quite a bit and then move the point down towards the bottom, and you'll see that we're not yanking the hairs out of place at the top. We're just sort of, well, there's a little bit going on because some of these are at the very end of their tethers, but mostly it's mostly not affecting that. A little higher, just a bit, and at the end, let's get that guy on in there. It's pretty good. Now, I realize that we're making a little bit of a rat's nest back there because we have that sort of lack of stiffness, so they're sort of bunching into each other a little bit. Easily, first off, it's not even going to be apparent because it's the back of the head and it's going to be riding mostly under the loose hairs, but secondly, it's not even going to stay that way for very long anyway. So you hit the push tool, boom. All right, now how does that look with the other group? Looks like the two will blend nicely because we got that overriding region. And I've got 5,000 units at the front, 5,000 units of hair on the back, so 10,000 total. It's not like it's an outrageous number for renders. It's not going to slow the renders very much at all. Still fly. But this area right here, you might worry about this overlapping area. Is this going to be too dense? Is it going to be apparent that these areas are thinner and this little area is denser? Well, of course, we can use the density tool to sort of make this area so that it's not as dense for either hair side, so that it melds even better. But really, unless you're looking at it from the top on with a microscope without the hair cap, you're probably not going to be able to tell any difference anyway, so it's not that important. So we jump back over to our main room here, and let's take a look at it through the director's camera and see if we're getting close to what we want. Yeah, it's looking decent, but you can sort of see that this is kind of still not in the right, or not all the way through. I need to push this out. The loose hairs in the back need to be pushed out. I didn't realize they were sort of down. So let's go back to that section. There's that hair group. And we hit it with the push tool. Now that should be outside of the shoulders. And while you do see some hairs that seem to be going through the shoulders, and that's because of the loose hairs. That's not the guide hairs. The guide hairs are actually off the shoulders, and this will be very easily. It won't be apparent in the animation that we do. Let's see if this is generally like I want. As far as, do I think it's going to fall in the right area? I kind of do. I think this is going to be okay. Although I want the offset to be a little higher for that back hair, so let me push it back out a little bit more. I don't know why it just seems to be so flat. Even when I come back into the room, it looks really flat to the scalp. I mean, it's like at 1%. Oh, it's at 0.01. No wonder I didn't push it very far. Let's try this again at 0.07. And where did it go? Or maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing. 0.07. We look at the dynamics. When I go back to the hair room, it's down again. What am I doing wrong? I'm missing something here. Doing something wrong. Well, that's okay. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to push it out more than it needs to go. Let's say 0.1. That's crazy talk. Kaboom! That's some bouffant hair right there. And then we're just going to drape it. And I'm going to keep it at 0.07 as the offset, or the collision distance. And we'll drape it. Not even terribly very much. Why is it going all the way down? Clear that. It shouldn't have gone that far down. That's better. That's what I'm talking about. There we go. Oh, yeah. Now, this is actually a little longer hair than I did in my previous animation on my first pass, but it's close to it. I mean, it's sort of the same. This is really what I did before. So why don't we, I'm going to pause it there. We're going to run a quick simulation. Let me show you I guess before I pause it, we're going to show you that I'm leaving the collision distance high on this. Oh, and I haven't set the hair shader, but I'm going to use a hair shader. All of the curls that you see in it is going to come just from the hair shader. I'm not using the clump or the curl tool in here to actually change the geometry of the guide hairs, I'm just going to use the hair shader that we were talking about before, the one that I sort of cooked up with a combination of the kink and the wave tool, something like that. Well, I'll pause it and I'll set that hair shader. We'll run a quick simulation where it falls into place, and then we'll show you the sort of the final result, because we're kind of there. I mean, I'm not doing much more than that. All right, I'll pause it and we'll come back.